get a good feeling, yeah. Get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Phil Drolet here in beautiful San Diego. It's a beautiful Monday, and today on this episode, it's my pleasure to have Cory Glazier on the show. Cory lives in San Diego, and we got the chance to actually live together for about a few weeks ago, and got to know each other better and talk about our respective projects. And Cory is doing some exceptional work in the area of international service and helping people go work abroad and help do development work in other countries. He's the founder of SHAP University, and he's creating some amazing platforms to help more people do more meaningful work. So Cory, it's my pleasure to have you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Happy to be here, Phil. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So I just give you a little intro, but obviously over the last few years, you've had some exceptional adventures and stories. And can you run us a bit over how did you got started with international service, and what's been your journey over the last few years in that regard?
Yeah, totally. So in my early 20s, I kind of bounced around some different entrepreneurial projects and such, and then my mom actually convinced me to get back into school, into university, and so I started to study international development and international conflict resolution, and really started to get passionate about it. And so, a couple years later, I started doing some international traveling and spent some time in Costa Rica and in Southeast Asia and in the Middle East. And then I found myself doing a backpacking trip across East Africa, Tanzania and Kenya and Uganda and those areas. And in that process, I kind of came and recognized the needs of the communities that I interacted with, because when I travel, I really like to get off the beaten path, and so I ended up actually living with a small community on the edge of Lake Victoria for a little bit, and so got a little bit more intimately connected to the situations that they were dealing with. And to fast forward through 4 years, ended up coming back and wanting to be able to do something to support communities like the one that I'd lived in. But also, from my academic background, I knew that so much international development work and international aid work ends up failing because the programs are unsustainable in their conception, and the people that run these types of programs don't have all the right information, and so there's poor planning and there's poor execution. And so I wanted to be a part of serving because I was able to experience with people that lived in extreme poverty firsthand, and not only just view them, but develop relationships with them. But I was also really skeptical at international aid work in general and if it could be useful. And so I had to contemplate for a while if I really wanted to get involved or not. And after a bit of consideration, it kind of came to me that yes, I did want to get involved and that I could, and that I really should. And what the platform that kind of has motivated me since that point was, if there are so many passionate people that want to get involved in international service, and there's so many problems with international service, then how can we actually fix that? And so I started SHAP, which was a nonprofit organization based out of San Diego, California. And my goal was to learn how to do community development work correctly and to carry out programs. And so I spent the next 3 years learning all about international development work and community development programs, and started raising money and recruiting volunteers and putting small teams together and going over to Kenya to carry out these programs. And so in about 3 years, I made 8 trips to some various different areas in Africa. I learned a tremendous about community development work, and then I realized that wasn't exactly the most important thing that I could be doing to be able to help to address the needs of those who are living in extreme poverty, because I was one person, and I'd only be able to affect just maybe tens of thousands of people if I did that for my whole life. And there's thousands of organizations that do this type of work, and so many of them don't do it the way that really results in a positive impact for the communities. And so that led me to realizing that what work I really, really wanted to be involved with was to create education and training resources so that the thousands of organizations and the millions of volunteers that are involved in these types of programs can actually learn how to do it better, and thereby, help to actually improve the quality of people's lives when they do international service, and not just like pretend to really make an impact. So that's kind of a little bit of the background and the whys and the whats of who I am and what I'm all about.
Cool. Well, I think that's really awesome, because I think at some point we got to realize that we have to expand our powers as much as possible. It's not just, you can be out there helping, serving all day, but like you say, you can only affect so many people by doing that. But I'm still curious, what's, before we go back to what you're doing right now and the large-scale projects you're working on, when you're in Africa or in any other development countries doing development work, what's a typical day like? For all of us who've never been there, who've never done it, what's run us through a typical day.
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that before, and those are the things that actually fascinate me about the work that I'm involved with and that other people are involved with, and it's interesting that people usually don't ask like nitty-gritty questions like that. But I love to be out there, and one of the reasons I like to be out there is because every day is an adventure. Like there's new challenges, new obstacles, new interesting things to figure out. And again, it really depends on what type of work you're doing and what types of programs you're involved with are going to dictate how you're going to spend your day. But for me personally, and the work that we do, which I feel is a really, it's a very effective style, revolves a lot around relationships. And so if I have a volunteer team out there, then I'll have different team members who have different what we call specialties or development areas of work. And so we'd have some that are working with business development and business training, others that are working with community sanitation improvement, and others, for example, that are working with farmers and agricultural development. And so from a leadership role, my job is to coordinate the work that they're doing and help to make sure that they're developing appropriate relationships with all the different stakeholders in the community on those different topics, and then helping to bring those stakeholders together to have really important conversations. Sometimes they're planning meetings, sometimes they're trainings, sometimes just facilitating conversations that help community members to talk about really important topics. Our role in community development work is more like a consultant than like a doer. Mm-hmm. And so our job is to A, help communities to identify their own problems, B, help them to discover their own solutions, and C, help to support them to implement those solutions with their own available resources. So the type of aid and development work that I believe in doesn't revolve around distribution, doesn't revolve around coming in and giving away products or building things for community members, which can have so many unsustainable ramifications. But the work that we do revolves around really developing deep relationships with people, discussing the issues that are most important to them, and supporting them in the process of figuring out solutions to the problems they deal with as a community. So, waking up early, managing the team, making sure that people are going in the right places at the right times, kind of coordinating who's doing what and where, and then myself and a part of those meetings, and a lot of planning and organizing. Sometimes I meet with the local chiefs or the political leaders to have like higher level strategy conversations and plannings, which is really interesting and a lot of fun. And you deal with the hot African sun, and you deal with the African food, which sometimes is really great and other times isn't really great. You're taking a shower at the end of the night with a bucket of dirty lake water, and you're slipping into a tent at the end of the night to just sleep on the ground and wake up the next morning and do it all over again.
Yeah, I can imagine it's an exciting lifestyle and definitely an adventure, but I can imagine it's not always easy. Like you're working all day and just hard conditions, but at the same time, what you're doing is so meaningful and so rewarding that I'm sure it helps make everything more manageable. When people go for the first time, what's usually the main challenges that they experience? What are the things that they're like, well, I didn't see that coming, or this is harder than I thought, or what's usually people's first experience like when they go out there?
Yeah, and it's really the answer to that question is a really deep, thick, complicated answer. So I'm going to try and simplify it as much as possible. But it's really that question that is why we created Shop University in the first place, and that's because so many people, their experience can be based upon the organization they get involved with, right? And there's a large spectrum of different types of organizations, many of which don't actually have community development as their highest priority. So those organizations end up creating very contrived volunteer service activities like painting a wall of a school building, or digging a trench that's not really very important, or some other types of things like this. So volunteers, you can imagine, right? They get all excited. They've always wanted to go to Africa. They've always wanted to serve people that are living in poverty. They found the service opportunity. They paid them a bunch of money. They fly over to Zambia. They get on the bus. They go to the hotel, whatever. And the first day they show up, they're given like a paintbrush, and they're and they quickly realize the disconnect between their activities and the actual needs of the community members that they're involved with. And that creates frustration and anxiety, and and just a lot of like things that the volunteers become upset about, because they recognize they're not actually helping to end poverty. So the answer to your question is, if they're getting involved in a program like that, then there might be some disappointment that what they're doing isn't really meeting their expectations. Now, if they were to get involved with a program like ours, then we're positioning our volunteers with community development work as the center. That's our priority. And because that's our priority, we put a tremendous amount of training and preparation into our volunteers, so that when they get on the ground with us, their expectations are very, very managed. They know pretty much what they're getting themselves into, and they've been trained and prepared to actually engage in the programs that our organization is implementing on the ground. So in that regard, the things that they're going to deal with are pretty much just sometimes like the sun's a little bit hotter than they expected, or they might not be as comfortable talking to people as they thought, because maybe they're not a natural public speaker or something like that, and so they have to kind of push through some of their comfort zones. They might help to organize a community meeting, and then nobody shows up, and so then there's that fear of that feeling of rejection, and not really knowing how to deal with that and work with people and pull things together. But we make sure that our volunteers commit to a couple months when they come over, so when they get past that learning curve, they're really positioned for success.
Cool. Yeah, I can imagine that. Well, it's like I said before, if you're engaged in things that you believe in, that you feel like are making a significant difference, putting up with the sun, putting up with, the adaptation is a lot easier than if you're just painting a fence all day, and in the back of your mind you're thinking, wow, anybody could do this. Why I'm not really adding value here. So
you really hit the nail on the head with that one. Totally.
So I think that's tremendous. And I'm sure over your trips you've definitely had enough time to notice that what the patterns were there. So now so a few years ago you started a nonprofit, and from living with you and seeing you work on your projects, I know you've transferred into more of a business platform, which is Shap University. Can you tell us why you decided to make the change? What was missing from the previous model, and how you feel that the new model is going to be more beneficial to everyone involved?
Yes. That's a big question, and there's so much that goes into it. If I try and simplify that down, I realized that the model itself wasn't the right model that I was trying to step into, because after doing that for a couple years, I recognized that if I was trying to work really, really hard to raise enough money for the organization to run through fundraising and stuff like that, and trying to run the whole organization based upon non-professional volunteer support and a couple other things, then I didn't have enough of the resources and energy to really dive into developing a product like online video education, which is very much a result of production. And that any energy that I put into training volunteers for free was actually that time was competing with the time that I needed to run the organization and be in fundraising and stuff like that. And so I really felt split. It's like, do I Do I help our mission to go forward and help to support our ability to train more volunteers, or do I help to fundraise today? And so that constant decision of where I put my energy, and there's like these two different roles that I play. Well, when I realized that there's a couple million volunteers that are involved in international service overseas every year, and I just did the math quickly that if we could just get in touch with just a very small section of that market and get them to just pay just a little bit to receive some video education before they went overseas, then we could run our company more like a business. I could bring on some investors so that I have some of the capital that I needed for some of the startup expenses and some of the technology and some of the product creation, and then just run it like a legitimate business, not be out there begging for fundraising for my whole life and putting so much energy into recruiting and managing volunteers and running grassroots fundraising strategies and meeting with donors and all that stuff. And this way I can just develop a product, see if there's a market for that product, and then get it to that product and basically like use all the business strategies that make businesses successful in an area that there's a lot of interest. So that's kind of where we're at, and that opens up all kinds of opportunities, because if we can generate revenue through our online education, then we can constantly reinvest that revenue in making our programs better, in developing our network, in doing more programs ourselves, and the list just goes on and on and on. So
cool.
And then I've actually got an article on my blog that I really went into detail on that question, that if there's anyone that's listening to this that's interested in this question on that transition from a nonprofit to a social business, I would really encourage them to check out that article, which I don't know, Phil, if you can easily make a link on this podcast or whatnot to that, but I think that would add value to those that are interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting question, because we're seeing a lot of it happening. Yeah. I took a class last year about basically how we could make a difference in third world countries, and one of the takeaways I had from it is that the non-for-profit model is what we've tried for the last 20, 30 years, and it hasn't really worked. Like, we're at this point now where we're going to have an honest assessment of being, is this really the best way to go? And there's really this movement of thinking that bringing the business, the for-profit sector into it is really the way to go, and to align incentives and make it so that you can focus your energies on the things that really matter the most. So what you said really confirms what I learned.
Yeah.
So I commend you for taking that leap. I'm sure that there was a lot of thinking that went between the, making it happen, and even for, like, I don't know, if moral reasons, it was hard for you to decide, like, okay, I'm going to turn this into a business, or you just knew that was the best thing for everybody involved?
Yeah, no, it was a very, very, very heavy decision. Affected a lot of people. I did my best to communicate and explain to people what we were doing, why we were doing it. When you run a nonprofit, you got a lot of volunteers that support that, I guess, or at least we did. So we had a lot of people that were really bought into our organization, and so I had to navigate, the people that felt like they had ownership and buy-in, and as a volunteer with the organization, and what they wanted, and kind of the vision that I was feeling and the direction that the organization had to go overall. So it definitely, there was a lot of energy that went into both the consideration and the transition process. And now the organization and the team looks very, very different. And so, but I believe that it's positioned, and we're kind of at a spot where, because of those changes, we'll ultimately and most importantly be able to make a greater impact in the world in the long run.
Awesome. Well, once again, I definitely acknowledge you for having the courage to step up and do what you knew to be right, even if there were obstacles to overcome. So I obviously saw a little bit of what is under the hood of Shap University when we stayed together, but can you tell us a bit about what's your vision as far as, in a practical sense, what kind of products we can expect to see coming out of Shap University in the, what's already out there, and what you want to create in the next few months?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil. That's my favorite question. If you kind of just imagine a typical volunteer, right? Let's imagine a college student that's had this kind of dream, I want to go and serve overseas. And for a lot of people, that's where it stops, right? The passion's there, but the steps to take are a complete mystery. And so the first product, and so actually to go back for a second. And so what they'll do is they'll get online and they'll search, I want to volunteer overseas, right? And so what are the first things that pop up on Google? Well, all the very profit-oriented volunteer placement organizations that do effective search engine marketing and have paid marketing. And so they're going to find a lot of these service programs that I kind of mentioned at the beginning, which don't really create a lot of value in the communities that they end up dispatching volunteers to go and spend time with and work with. And it's essentially a travel agency / vacation planner that creates a very Disneyland-esque experience with volunteer service. And it's very frustrating. A lot of people in the world of academia just are really unpleased with this aspect of the volunteer tourism industry. So that's going to be their first major challenge the volunteers are going to face. And so our first product is called the Starter's Guide to Sustainable International Service. And our goal is to connect to people that have this desire and this passion but don't know how to get involved. Maybe they've done a little bit of searching online, but they don't feel comfortable with these different organizations. And so it's just a 4-video product that takes them step by step on all of the things that they need to consider in the process of stepping into the role of a sustainable international volunteer. And so that's the Starter's Guide. And that's, again, just a very, very basic entry-level program, and we'll constantly be developing these to be better and better and get our marketing out there more and more, so we'll actually be able to connect to people all over the world that have these interests and are doing these searches online. And then from there, our goal is to, once they've recognized, there's a difference between unsustainable volunteering overseas and sustainable volunteering overseas, and they understand that, and then they realize that the difference between me actually making an impact for good or not is whether I get educated and trained and then connected to the right service programs. And so then Shap University steps up to fill in all those needs. And so we'll have education programs that teach people more about extreme poverty so they can better understand the situations and the issues that the people that will be interacting with go through, which is a very, very critical first step. There's a quote that says, a problem well enough understood already has a solution. And so the more we can educate people about extreme poverty and how it affects people's lives, the more that positions them to really step up and serve. And then that's followed by a series of video modules that teach them all about sustainable community development work and how to step into that role as a sustainable volunteer and how to work with organizations that are doing sustainable programs and what types of roles they would play. And then after that, they get to choose, kind of like a mini university experience. They choose a major. So it could be clean water access or women's empowerment or education support, or then some of the ones I mentioned earlier, like agricultural development or business development or sanitation improvement. And they get a module that trains them on that technical piece. So then they're kind of prepared with the background information, the knowledge and understanding of how to do community development work, and then they've got a technical specialty that's going to prepare them to get on a team working with their development program that they end up getting dispatched to, and really engaging in that work as an active player rather than just meaningless labor or as like a observing type of role.
Cool. That, man, I gotta say, like, I already knew what was involved, but just the way you just explained it is amazing. Like, this is exactly what is needed, and obviously you're the right person to know because you've been on both sides of the fence and you've seen on the field what's needed, and you've also been in the organization to really, and I'm sure you spent a lot of time thinking how you can create something that's gonna drive results and really optimize the experience for everybody. And to me, this just sounds fantastic. Like I'm really impressed. So for someone who's still on the fence and they're thinking about it and deep down they want to know it, they want to do it, but there's still some fear. And what would you say to them if someone came up to you and they're like, "Hey, Cory, I've been thinking about doing this, but I'm still not sure." What would be your message to that person?
Serving as a volunteer overseas has completely changed my life, and as I mentioned before, there's a lot of criticism about international volunteering and does it really make a positive impact and all that kind of stuff. And that criticism is it's needed and it's real and it's true, but that doesn't mean that all service programs are that way. And so I would tell them that, hey, I felt exactly what you feel, and go for it. Like, don't give up on that dream and don't give up on that passion, because if you follow that all the way through, then I guarantee you that you'll have a transformational experience yourself. Your life will never be the same, and you'll really be able to connect to and love and support and serve the people that you end up working with. But make sure that you've got a good head on your shoulders, and you take the time and energy to be able to learn what you need to learn, get networked into the right service program, and don't try and rush into it. Don't try and just follow the herd, and do what everybody else is doing. But really take the time and energy to figure out for yourself what's going to be the best setup for you. And again, that's where the starter's guide that I mentioned before would really come in, because it walks a person through positioning themselves to consider all the things they're going to need to consider. So I tell them, like, yeah, go for it. Like, do not give up on that dream, and be really responsible about how you proceed. I had a professor that I really, really respected when I went to SDSU, and he said something, and the moment he said it, man, this is stuck in my brain, just like so, you know what I mean? Like, just so deep, so there. It's always like just like on the tip of my tongue. Yeah. He said that so many people say, especially when they look at, a situation like a community that's living in poverty, they say, don't just sit there, do something. And he said that we need to really, really reevaluate that statement. And we should transform that statement to, don't just do something, sit there. Sit there for a little bit, get your head on straight, figure out what's going on, ask the right questions, do the research, do the learning, do the training, do the preparation, and make whatever you're going to do be the best that you can do. And if you can only spend a week or two on the ground because you want to be an international volunteer this year, then don't do that. You're not going to have a meaningful experience being on the ground for a week or two. So plan it far enough out that you can spend maybe 2 or 3 months. You can really get connected. You get immersed in the culture. You can get immersed in the community. You can develop relationships. So I would just say, follow your heart, but let me give you some advice as you do that.
No, exactly. That's beautifully answered. And if anyone who's like looking to go spend a month or two, to me, it seems like it's so worth it to take the time beforehand to really do your homework, to really get to know, how you can get the most out of this experience. And I think that quote from your professor is spot on. Yeah. Because once you're there, if you end up in a bad situation, or in a situation that's what you expected was not what you expected, then you're stuck. You have to stick it out for however long.
And another thing I really want to add to that conversation, Phil, sorry to cut you off, but I would also really want to ask the person what their motives are, because a lot of people that say they want to do international service, they are really just saying they want to travel overseas, and international service in their mind has become synonymous with international travel.
Right.
And so I'd really want to create a distinction and say, hey, if you just want to throw a backpack on and go have an adventure, then that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I did that for a couple years before I ever started serving anyone, So if that's what's there and real for you, then just do that, and don't feel the pressure that traveling overseas means that you have to be connected to a service program. Right. And if you are wanting to be connected to a service program, then there's some steps to do that right. And just in the same way that you can't go and build a bridge for a freeway just because you have this moral feeling like there needs to be a bridge there, or I just want to do heart surgery because I really feel like this person needs heart surgery. Like, those are stupid and irresponsible decisions. And when we have communities that are living in extreme poverty and every day is a struggle for survival, and they're on the brink of it's just a very, very sensitive space to be in, then if you show up and you offer unsustainable advice or poor counsel or unsustainable programs, then you can really cause serious problems. And these are very real, just like building a bridge that wasn't constructed right or doing heart surgery that's not performed correctly. And so if you check in and yes, I want to travel overseas, but I definitely want to be a part of serving, then like a doctor or an engineer, maybe not to the same degree, but in the same thought process, make sure that you learn what you need to do so you can do that effectively and responsibly.
Cool. And if I'm not mistaken, the first part of the starter's guide that you've created is based around that question and really figuring out if that's really for you and that's really what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So if people want to, so anyone who's listening to this right now, they're like, you know what, this is the sign I've been waiting for. This is the time, and they want to pick up your starter's guide to really organize their trip and get all the knowledge that they need to have in order to make the most of the experience and to really serve as best as they can. Where can they find that?
So they just go to the URL www.sustainablevolunteer.info.
Okay.
Sustainablevolunteer.info. And that just leads to a little video that kind of asks them a couple questions, kind of like a little promotional video. And then I give them those 4 videos totally free. And so they can watch that first one, which is 30 minutes, which helps them to ask the question if they really are interested in international service, or maybe they're just interested in being an international traveler. And then if they're interested in the rest of the training, then they get access to my membership site for just $9. It's just a one-time thing. And I would love to just give all this away for free, but because I charge a little bit for it, that allows me to maintain this as a profession and keep putting my full-time energy into developing more and more better education and training for international volunteers. So I feel like it's a good use of $9 to not only get that information, but also support the work that we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen I've seen what's in the program, and it's worth so much more than $9. I think at that price point, it's an amazing deal. And any person who's considering going to do international service, it's almost a no-brainer that they should pick it up, in my opinion. So, guys, I definitely encourage you to do so, and I'm saying that in a totally unbiased manner. So, Cory, before I let you go, I just I want to say that this has been really, really informative, and you do a great job at explaining it. You definitely have your speech aligned, and you're really good at explaining it in a way that people like me who are not that familiar with the whole thing can understand. So good job on that.
Thank you.
Just on a personal level, so my website is about optimal living and creating a lifestyle that maximizes our levels of happiness, energy, and all that good stuff. So one question I ask to all my guests is, what's the one thing that you, Cory, do in your life that you try to do every day that you've noticed makes the biggest difference in your levels of energy and happiness?
Yeah. Being in the space of an entrepreneur, it's demanding and it requires a lot from you, and it affects you in a lot of ways. So you definitely got to take care of yourself, or else there's no way you can show up for your mission,
Yeah.
And so there's a number of things that are really important to me, but if I was to whittle it all down to one, I would definitely say it's the practice of finding peace and finding calm, despite the turbulent nature of life and of our companies and our businesses and things we're involved with. And so, I have just a personal meditation practice which I try and do every day, and that just involves kind of taking a couple minutes to myself, even when I've got so many other things on my plate and I feel like I don't have time for it, and just kind of relaxing. And I stay by the coast a lot, so oftentimes just kind of with the ocean breeze and just kind of coming to myself. And sometimes that turns out to be just kind of like an empty space of relaxation, and sometimes it allows me to contemplate things that I might not give myself time to really contemplate in the midst of a busy schedule and stuff. And so maybe 15 or 20 minutes of a meditation or contemplation practice every day helps me to feel really grounded. And it's funny because no matter what your energy is going into it, like if you're frustrated, if you got on a lot on your plate, or you feel really overwhelmed or whatever, which I feel those things all the time, it's just crazy how you come out of it feeling really refreshed. Like you kind of took a shower in beautiful energy, and now you're kind of ready to get back to whatever your day was. So that's one thing that I think that without it, it would be very hard for me to find the consistency and the stability and the calmness in the work that I do.
Cool. Well, I couldn't agree more. Meditation is my number one practice. It's the one that for me is totally non-negotiable, and that 100% each and every day for the rest of my life I intend on doing. So I definitely understand what you mean there. And I think the more we're trying to achieve big dreams and big goals, and the more crazy things happen in our life, the more important it is going to be to keep those 10, 15 minutes. And I know a lot of people have this tendency to say, oh, I'm so busy today, I'm going to skip the meditation. But it's actually on the days where you're the most busy that you need it the most. And I always like to think of the Dalai Lama. When he's traveling, he always puts in at least 1 hour of meditation. And he says, but if I have an extremely busy day, I make sure I do 2 hours. So if you think you don't have time, you do. And doing that 10, 15 minutes, in the end, is going to save you a lot of time, because you're going to be so much clearer and more composed, and your thoughts are going to be organized. So it's definitely well worth it. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Before the days of Macs, when I had other computers, I had to defragment the computer, which kind of went through and like cleaned up all the files and everything else that it did. And it takes time to like defragment your computer, and sometimes you can't use your computer while it's doing it. But if you don't, your computer starts working like slower and slower and slower until like you just can't open something, and you're like why isn't my computer working? You realize like we haven't defragmented it for a year, so it's just like there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up. So you take the time to defragment your computer every day, and it works for you.
Exactly. That's a beautiful analogy. I might have to steal that one.
You got it, man. Just trademark me. I want royalties.
Sounds good. All right. So on this note, I'm gonna let you go, Cory.
Cool.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really informative, and I really hope that anyone listening out there was inspired, and now they have the resources through Shape University to make these dreams come true. Before you go, do you have any last words of wisdom you want to share with us?
No, Phil. It's been a pleasure. Just one last plug, sustainablevolunteer.info will get you to that STARS program. And then I've got a blog at coryglazier.com. If people want to just get some more information or read some of my other posts about some of the other stuff that we talked about earlier. But other than that, I love what you're doing, Phil, and I'm excited to see, as you're able to get your message out about wellness and living to more and more people and help to inspire them. And I've been inspired by my relationship with you as well. So I appreciate that, brother. And let's just keep doing good things, man.
Sounds good. I'm in.
All right. Sounds great, bro.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, like usual, don't hesitate to get in touch with me or Cory. And we'll talk to you next week. Take care.
Thanks, Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.